Finding inner peace, and no more comments about belly buttons. If you're taking notes, this is the first thing to jot down. My priority focus. What's the priority that we've got? Well, it comes into these words. It comes down to this, brothers and sisters. So here's the priority. Obviously, this is zooming us in. So, if it comes down to this, what has gone before so that it comes down to this point? Well, we really need to back up to the beginning of chapter 4, and very quickly it looks like this. Verse 1, will stand firm in the Lord. So it comes down to this. If you want stability in your life, what we were about to hear is important. The conflict between these two lovely ladies. It comes down to this. If you want to know how to deal with conflict in a successful way, then it comes down to what we're about to be told. Help those folks who are with me. It comes down to this. If you want to know about what good team dynamics looks like, then we're about to find out. In verse 4, it was rejoice in the Lord always. If you want to know how to do really good celebration, how to bring something positive in, it comes down to this that we're about to hear. Let your gentleness in verse 5. So if you want to be able to embrace some really positive personal action in yourself, then it comes down to this. And we're about to find out what that is. If you're struggling with anxiety or worried about something, or peace of mind is what you want, it comes down to this. And here it is. It's about to be told to us. In every situation by prayer, if you want to know how to pray effectively, it comes down to this. And it's about to be told to us. In verse 7, the peace of God that garrisons us. If we want strength, it comes down to this, and we're about to find out what it is. And now we're in verse 8. Woohoo! Life is complex. Get beyond the complexity, because it comes down to this. The bottom line. When you get through all the calculations and the workings out of how to do it, it comes down to this. And you know what? It's not that hard. The Christian life is actually so simple that even a child can understand it, which is great news for some of us. It's not as hard as you might think it could be. So it comes down to this, brothers and sisters. So let's work out what this priority is that we're going to be told. Now, I know that you've read ahead, and so you already know the answer. And so here it is. The second thing you can jot down is, the second heading, my primary focus. We've got a priority. It comes down to this. What's the primary thing that we need to be thinking about? And it's here filling most of verse 8. You need to see everything. Notice we're told everything just a few times. You really need to get this into your head, that everything is important. Everything is important. And I think the reason why we're told that everything is important is because when something becomes important, you end up with tunnel vision. And it's the thing that is important for you at the moment that just robs your perspective of everything else. You just get caught up in my illness and nothing else matters. You get caught up in the bill that is so difficult to pay and nothing else matters. You get caught up in that painful person. Why did I have to be related to him or her? And that's all that matters, and you end up crowding out everything else. And so we're told everything is important. Don't lose sight that there's other stuff. So what about this everything? Well, we need to see everything from a divine point of view. Get God's perspective on the stuff that's going on all around you. Because have a look at these virtues that are listed here. True, honourable, right, pure, lovely, admirable. Where do you think they come from? Where do you think they have their most perfect expression? This is what God's character is like. And so if you're going to have some perspective, get rid of all the mess and say, okay, the bottom line is this, that everything begins with God's character. Now, I know this is a Baptist church, so don't let word of this get out anywhere. We're supposed to be really big on the Bible, and it's all about, it's in the Bible, and that's true. But the Bible is telling us about the character of God, and it's the character of God that's the foundation for all sound doctrine. It's not just that it's the Bible, it's what the Bible is telling us. And it's who God is. And when you see life from, hang on, there's a divine perspective here. God's character is at play even in the difficulties. Jump back into the Old Testament. You're now an expert in the Old Testament, having sung El Shaddai, all those Hebrew words. The angelic leaders were calling to one another. This is what the angels are calling out in heaven. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory. Holy means perfection. The whole display of perfection in all its beauty and to be admired. Everything that's a summary of everything that is good is what holiness is. And the angels are crying out, God's got it. God's got it all. That's why you can trust Him. That's why He's reliable. That's why we can call on Him. Because God is holy. He's got every perfection that you could ever possibly need, and He wants to share it with you. But see everything from a discerning point of view, because it's everything that's true. You're going to bump into some things this week, I warn you now, that are not true. You're going to bump into things that are not honourable. You're going to get hit with things that are not right and not pure, not lovely, not admirable. And in spite of how they might be presented to you, you need to be discerning and think, hang on, I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not going to swallow that lie. I'm not going to get caught up in that mess. There's a better way of doing things, a more godly way, the divine perspective, and I need to be discerning if I'm going to hit the bottom line and get it right. Otherwise I get caught up in all the calculations above it that are so messy. Be discerning. That's why we need the wisdom of God. And that's ultimately what good theology is. Christ died for us in order that He could live in us, and now He lives in us in order that He can live through us. And His wisdom is going to show us this discernment, to be able to pick these things. Now, the Corinthians. If ever I was called to a church like Corinth, I would not want to go. This is the very opposite of what we've got here. The Corinthians would say things like, I've got the right to do anything that I want to do, and no one can tell me otherwise. Well, the apostle's not going to argue with them on that. You say, I've got the right to do anything, but the reply is, but not everything is actually beneficial for you. Yeah, you've got the right to do anything, but are you smart enough to be discerning and realise that not everything is beneficial? Stamp their feet. I've got the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. Not everything is edifying. Not everything is going to build you up. Not everything that you do is going to build up anybody else. See things, everything, from a discerning point of view. Is it really helpful? That's 1 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians, he hasn't finished with them yet, so sometime later there's another letter. A little poem. This is actually not part of Scripture, but it's useful anyway. Your mind is a garden. Your thoughts are the seeds. You can grow flowers, or you can grow weeds. It's so good it could almost be Scripture. And the response that the Corinthians are given in their second letter is, take every thought captive. Grab the thoughts. Be discerning about what's the right thing to plant inside your head. What is the seed that you're putting in your mind? Because that's going to grow. It will grow. It's a very fertile place. All sorts of bizarre things can grow there. But are you putting in seeds that are really going to be something attractive? Robert Louis Stevenson. Every boy has read Treasure Island. I don't think this is part of Treasure Island, but he did say, do not judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant. Have you ever got to the end of the day and thought to yourself, what did I do? Did I do anything at all useful today? And you get to that point and you're thinking, what have I reaped today? And the answer is you might not have reaped anything at all. But you don't have to reap every day. What you do is you sow seeds every day. And that's the determining factor of whether you had a good day or a bad day. What you sow, not necessarily what you reap. And so, if you're going to see everything, you also need to see it not just from a divine perspective or a discerning perspective, but also from a disciplined perspective. And so the end of verse 8 says, keep on thinking about those things. There's a discipline that your head requires. I know mine does. I'm not sure how to describe my mind. It's just, look, it's a really bizarre place, I tell you. And trying to nail it down is next to impossible, because I try to capture a thought, and next thing I know, I lost that one, and I'm somewhere else. My head is in a different place, at a different time, in a different location, with different people. And I try and capture that thought, and it's all over the shop. It's a messy place in here, I tell you. But the instruction that I need to heed is see everything from a disciplined point of view. To keep on thinking about those things, those virtuous things, those holy things. There's the discipline of timing. When do I think on those things? Well, I need to keep on thinking about those things. There's no, oh well, I thought about something nice. I got up in the morning and I thought a warm fuzzy thought, and now I'm free for the rest of the day. It doesn't work like that. It's keep on thinking about those things. The discipline of timing. And there's the discipline of the topic. Keep on thinking about those things. Those virtues, those holy things, the character of God, because that is what's going to make a difference to what happens inside my head. And when it happens inside my head, then it will overflow in a positive way. So I need a disciplined point of view. 3,000 years ago, these words were written. Above all, this is pretty important if it's above all, be careful what you think, because your thoughts control your life. And it doesn't matter if you're a left brain logic or a right brain creative, just be careful what you think, because it makes a difference in you. It determines what your future is going to be. It determines what you are going to choose and who you are going to become because of the thoughts that you entertain. So your grey matter matters. It matters to you, it matters to God, and it matters to others as well. And then that brings us into the third thing. My practical focus. The Bible is immensely practical. It's not just theology for your head. It has to work. And so here we've got a practical focus in verse 9. How is this going to work? What is it that's going to make the Bible practical, or this instruction practical especially? First up, I need to accept better input into my life. You've got to have better input. Whatever you have learned, whatever you have received, be discerning and make sure that you reject the stuff that's negative and accept and put into your head, keep in your head, keep on thinking on those things that are positive. If they're not, put them behind you and have nothing to do with them. If you keep on putting them in the forefront of your mind, if you keep on reminding yourself about the negative, about the horrible, about the painful, you're going to keep stumbling over it. Some things you just have to put behind you in order to be able to make some progress through your life. It gets harder though. Be a better role model. Now, I look at this and think, if I was writing the Bible, I didn't get consulted, but if I was writing the Bible, I probably wouldn't have written this, that's for sure. Because this is written by an apostle. You know, he's up there. And he says, whatever you've learned or received, what you have heard from me or seen in me. Now, I would hate to say to you, look at me because I am such a great role model and you should be just like me. You'd all fall over laughing. He's an apostle. He knows what he's talking about. He knows theology. And he knows that Jesus is the best role model. But he doesn't say that. He doesn't say, whatever you've heard from Jesus, whatever you've learned about Jesus, put into practice. He bypasses Jesus altogether and says, whatever you've heard from me, whatever you've seen me do. And now it starts to get a bit awkward and a bit personal, because that means I need to be adopting that same position as well. To be the one who can say, I'm only human, but if you look at me, you should be able to see what Jesus was like in this situation. Now, here he is writing to the Philippians. Jesus never went to Philippi, but Paul did. And so Paul writes, in Philippi, this is what it looks like to be a disciplined follower of Jesus. You heard it from me, you saw it in me, and let's try it here. What does it mean to be a disciplined follower of Jesus in Panania, in Canterbury Bankstown, in Sydney, in Australia, in the 21st century, whatever you like? We need to be putting it into practice so that others can see what it looks like in the real world, in the flesh. That's us. That's us. The world isn't changed by my opinion. It is changed, though, by my example. Just telling people, oh, you should do this. Or Les down the street, oh, tell them how to fix this. Oh, it's not changed by my opinion. We've got to live it out. Christ died for me so that he could live in me, and he's now living in me so that he can live through me. I'm now the example. So we can read, whatever you've heard in me, seen in me. This is the example of Jesus. And then we need to practice better habits. Habits is something you get into the habit of doing. You do it again and again. It doesn't need a great decision or great turmoil or lots of prayer. Should I or shouldn't I? It's just your habit. You do it because it becomes natural and automatic. So keep on putting into practice this discernment of godliness and use your mind to turn your hands to where they should be. So how does it work? You be transformed from your head out, from your mind out. Be transformed with this new thought pattern that you're going to adopt, with this new way of seeing things as you take on God's own personal qualities of what's true and good and lovely and honourable and noble. That's what will change things from the inside out. And then the verse ends with this, and the God of peace will be with you. And so here we can reap. And what we are reaping is better results. It is a godliness. A godly character is not just out there. It's not just in heaven. It's now in here. It's Christ living in me, living through me. That's what's making a difference. These are the results that we're reaping. There's lots of names for God, and we could sit here for an hour and watch them, but it's not about just having the title. But what a great title the God of peace is. Because for many people that's the one that they need to know. It ties in with so many others. And so what do? We think on these things, and the result is the God of peace is with us. He's still the God of power, still the God of glory. He's still El Shaddai. But for us, with us and in us, He's the God of peace. So what are we going to do? You need to think on these things. To keep on adding into our heads, into our minds, into our lives, these things that are the very nature of God Himself. You can't just unthink something. I am not going to think about chocolate. I'm not going to think about cherry ripes. I'm not going to think about hazelnut dark milk. You can't unthink something like that. What you need to do is put into your mind something that's going to give less space for the negative stuff you don't want to think about. Add in more and more that is good and right and noble and honourable and lovely, and you just won't have the time, the headspace, the energy or the desire to think about the negative stuff. You can do better than that even. We're going for steak knives now. Add not just more positive, but add the most positive. And it's God's own character. As we think on everything that is like Him, everything that is the expression of His goodness, His love, His sovereignty, His power, His grace, His mercy, His generosity, think on those things, and you've got no room for anything that's negative. This is where we're going. This is the bottom line. Fill your mind, and then you can live the life. Think on these things, and the God of peace will be with you. That's a good place to be. So let me pray for us. Father, there are so many things in this world that are negative. We know that because we bump into them all the time. But we want to fill our minds with everything that is true and honourable and right and pure and lovely and admirable and excellent and praiseworthy, because that's you. That's you and your actions that you want to do in our lives so that you can overflow through our lives. Oh, Father, take our minds and help us to be focused with who you are, what you want to do, the transformation that you want to make, so that we might indeed be the very expression of the life of Christ himself. Forgive us for being small-minded, petty-minded, for using our minds to store up negative stuff about ourselves, our circumstances and others. Help us to squeeze that out as we fill ourselves with all that is good and holy. So continue to guide us, we ask now, in our Redeemer's name. Amen.